ask you about your process, because one of the poems in that book, A Prayer for P, is this acrostic poem. You know, where you continue, it's a lot of letters. It sounds exhausting. And your project books, they seem to require a lot of stamina, a lot of, is exhaustion important to you as a writer?
That's an interesting question. I think the answer is yes, at its core, because it's at the point of exhaustion that epiphany happens. I mean, you know, think about the hagiographies and, you know, the stories of the saints. It's always like in the moment of the deepest torment and lack of sleep and fasting, and then the visions come, you know?
Yeah.
And the visions come when you get pushed all the way to the edge of your limits. I am not calling myself a saint, though if you would like to think of me that way, that is fine. But I do think that we need to push ourselves to the edge of the limits. We need to go past what we know we understand and past what we know we can bear. And then we learn something new. Also, though, I think that I had enough of my early training as a musician and as an athlete where I spent a lot of time doing really tedious exercises that seemed to not be at all connected with the glory moment that I was trying to achieve. But it was very clear to me, or made very clear to me, depending, you know, on the day, that these mundane exercises were part of the achievement of the moment of glory.
I didn't know you were a musician.
I played piano for years and years and years. And then I stopped, which is a whole other conversation that we could have about how I deal with silent periods in writing. But, and so I feel like a lot of what I do with form, for instance, is just push and push and push and push the sonnet until, ta-da, I've created my own sonnet. I've created my own thing, but I've done a lot of tedious, boring, not uninspired sonnets. I did a lot of uninspired acrostics because I was interested in how to turn this reduced form that we've made into this boring task that we give third graders, right? Mom, magnificent, outstanding, mommy, you know, I mean, it's like, they're just awful acrostics that we give kids, but it's a form. It's something that we've brought into the tradition for a reason, because it had once been moving. And it can be instructive and engaging and exciting. And so I wanted to figure out how to do it. And so I played a lot with it. And then one day I was sitting down just to play with the form. And I found this Cavafy poem that I thought was really beautiful, and I wanted to work with it. And really, from my recollection, and you know we always change these recollections, it was probably much further into this process than immediately. But let's just say immediately, sitting down with that poem, I realized that I had the vessel to write the elegy for my friend that I'd been wanting to write, and that I didn't know how to write because it was too huge. The set of emotions I was feeling was too huge, but the container of the acrostic form that forced me back to a particular letter so that I would have to drive the sentence that I was writing or the line that I was writing towards coming back to a capital V in the next line. There's only so many words you can use a capital V with, you know? What are you gonna do? So I have to drive my line so that I can turn back around and come to that. And so it really, that poem in particular is a really strong example of how form meets content for me, that the technical aspects of the poem allow entry into a thematic project, not vice versa. And form really drives me. Form often drives me ahead of content. So I think that's part of why I got sad when you said that things are so content driven. I'm deeply engaged by what it is that different traditional forms allow us to do, and also what they don't allow us to do, right? So really, I love the sonnet. I think the sonnet is an amazing form. I don't write what people consider to be traditional sonnets. I've come to call mine rogue sonnets because they follow some elements of the received tradition of the sonnet, and then they refuse others. But I don't think that that's actually against any rules. The sonnet that we have in English first was a borrowed version of an Italian form that was then changed and again changed and again changed. And Shakespeare's sonnets are best because he's always fudging with the form. He's always making substitutions. It's the substitutions that make his poems most interesting. And then the next person who did a sonnet didn't do it exactly like Shakespeare's, which is why we have the Shakespearean form and the Spenserian form and the Miltonic sonnet and the Keatsian sonnet. All of these people create their own versions of how to break the stanzas, how to create rhyme within the line. So the sonnet, the little song, is a tradition that is open to mutation, that it's demanding of mutation. And so when I create my own mutation of the poem that concentrates on internal rhyme as opposed to end rhymes, that really pays attention to the volta, because I'm deeply interested in the way that the sonnet is a little essay, a little argument that has a turn of some sort, that turns towards confirmation or refutation of what it is that has happened thus far in the first 8 lines of the poem, that has a closure, but it's not a closure in a couplet for me. It's the closure in the last 4 to 6 lines of the poem. That's where the closure happens to me. That all these things are really important in how I get to the content, right? So there is content in there, but the content has come in how I'm playing against the form and how I'm pushing against that little cage of the sonnet.